Hello, friends. Welcome back to ABN's Trinity channel for another episode of Islam and the News, the premiere episode of 2018. And as usual, my opening is well, it's not always because today is a different day than in the days past, but today is Friday, January 12th in the year of our Lord 2018. Yes, the season premiere of Islam and the News. We had a great year in 2017. We thank you so much for your prayers and your support and just all the sharing that everyone did, taking the videos. Again, the links are found on Trinity Channel's YouTube channel, also my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Tony Gourlay, where you can find all of the weekly shows that I do, all of the most recent episodes, as well as basically every episode. I actually have playlists there, which give you every single episode of Islam in the News, Colliding Worldviews, Russia Christie's Truth Matters. And again, you can find these on the Trinity Channel's YouTube channel as well. A great year in 2017. Thank you so much for your support and for just spreading the news about ABN's digital tree and the free app that you can download on any mobile device just about. You go to trinitychannel.com/platforms. You can see all the different platforms. You can download this free app. There are 15, 20 different channels just in English alone. And you can click on Trinity Channel to actually watch these shows live from your mobile device. Or if you have Amazon Fire Stick, Roku, Chromecast Stick, you can watch it on those as well. Again, just check out trinitychannel.com. You can find out all the different platforms. And again, they are archived on YouTube and also my Vimeo channel as well. A lot of news every single week. As you tuned in 2017, I always told you I had more stories than I had time to go through. Of course, today is the same. But we want to get you updated on a few different things that are happening. Of course, we've been off for a couple of weeks because of the Christmas break, and we hope that everybody had a blessed Christmas and blessed New Year. And we want to start this year strong. So if you can pray for us right from the get-go, that 2018 would be a great year, be a year that the Lord would use all of these different weekly shows that we do. Pastor Joseph's The Cross and the Crescent, the marathon that we have coming up the very first week of June. That will be a one-week marathon like they've been the last couple of times as well. So please start spreading the word about that as well. Getting to the news, I have here from World Watch Monitor, Netherlands joins UN Security Council to shine light on IS genocide. The Netherlands just joined the UN Security Council as a temporary member for a year. 10 days before, its foreign minister, Halbe Zijlstra, published a letter explaining the Dutch government's response to the use by politicians of the term genocide, quote unquote. The Dutch parliament had several debates on the genocide committed by members of the Islamic State group and came to a consensus that it was not for politicians, but for the international judicial system to make such a determination. The Dutch government's response, the main points of which can be viewed at the bottom of the article here on this site, followed a joint legal opinion from the Advisory Committee on International Law Issues and the External Adjudication Advisor, which it had requested at the end of 2016. It says here, quote, "The Dutch government must be commended for its work on this topic. Hopefully those promises are translated into action and will be visible over the next year." The Dutch government supported this legal opinion and confirmed its reluctance to use the word genocide where such a determination had not been previously made by an international court or UN body. However, concerning the atrocities perpetrated by IS against Christians and Yazidis, the Dutch government confirmed that it, quote, "is the opinion that sufficient facts have been established to judge that IS is most likely guilty of genocide and crimes against humanity." It added that the obligations under the 1948 UN Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide apply to IS's atrocities. Now, if you've been watching Islam in the News, this, of course, is no surprise. Here, you find all the videos and the pictures that you won't find in the mainstream media. I know all of our loyal viewers have no doubt. There's no doubt in your mind that, yes, this is in fact genocide. I don't know why these places even have to debate this. You've seen the pictures. You've seen the videos. We've covered all kinds of stuff. And I just want to continue showing this picture here while I give some other updates on this. UN warns of humanitarian catastrophe in Syria. UN agencies are sending aid to some 50,000 displaced Syrians in a remote desert camp for the first time since June, hoisting supplies by crane across the sealed Jordan-Syria border. Residents of the Rukba encampment, a majority of them women and children, live in harsh conditions. Food and other staples are in short supply, and many can't afford black market goods. Jordan sealed the border on security grounds in June of 2016 after Islamic State extremists killed 7 Jordanian border guards. The closure severely disrupted aid shipments. UN agencies said Wednesday that the Syrians are in urgent need of aid. Shipments include food, solar lamps, children's clothes, blankets, and bread stoves. Jordan says the crane drop is a one-off, and that the UN must supply Rukban from Syria. Also, from a Syrian, I actually heard from Fox News, U.S. changes rules on the UN to help Assyrian and minority victims of genocide in Iraq. I did touch on this a while back about how the U.S. says, hey, we're just going to bypass this stuff. We're just going to go help people ourselves or send this aid. Help appears finally to be on the way to thousands of desperate Christian, Yazidi, and other minority refugees in northern Iraq. More than 2 months after Vice President Pence promised last October 25th to stop funding ineffective relief efforts at the United Nations and, quote, provide support directly to persecuted communities through U.S. aid. After some complicated negotiation between the Trump administration and the UN, USAID has announced a revamp of its announced $150 million contribution to a projected $420 million funding facility for stabilization in Iraq, or FFS, which is dispersed through the United Nations Development Program, which is UNDP, to specifically address the needs of vulnerable religious and ethnic minorities communities in Iraq's northerly Nineveh province. A $55 million slice of a $75 million USAID payment already forwarded to the UNDP fund is to be especially aimed at, quote, those who have been victims of atrocities by ISIS. Atrocities, pretty much genocide, which other people are trying to figure out. Yes, that definitely did happen. Also from NRD TV, U.S. to provide $75 million in additional funding for Iraq stabilization. As you can see here, the United States is sending a lot of money to try to help the people out who are still over there. It is our prayer that these people are ministered to in their physical needs, their temporal needs, but of course, we definitely hope that people are out there. We know that people are there sharing the gospel with people as well. If we give people food and clothing and all these different temporal needs now, but we don't share the most important information they need, which is the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ, well, then again, all we're doing is making this world a better place to go to hell from, because we're improving their life here, but not, again, in the life to come or the afterlife. So we just want to continue to be in prayer for the situation in the Middle East. We have heard, as I've said here too, that the territory that ISIS has been had control over has greatly diminished. It's very small now. But of course, there's still people who are hurting from what has already happened. We can't just say, okay, ISIS is done, they're taken care of. No, there's a whole lot of people who are still affected by many months or years of atrocities and genocide that actually was taking place. Moving on to Al Arabia, I have here, Saudi women enter stadium for first time to attend soccer match. As it says, in yet another historic day in Saudi Arabia, on Friday, families began to enter the sports stadiums for the first time with the start of round 17 of the Saudi League. The King Abdullah Sports City Stadium in Jeddah opened its doors for Saudi women to attend the Saudi Professional League game scheduled between Al Ahly Club of Jeddah and Al Batin. In the run-up to the event, social media had been abuzz with images showing preparations ahead of the game. Signage had been placed showing the women's entrance and even including a women's smoking section. A special section has been assigned for women who smoke, according to the images released. The General Authority for Sports had announced the readiness of the 3 stadiums in Jeddah, Riyadh, and Dammam to welcome the families of the Saudi Professional League. In the King Abdullah Sports City Stadium in Jeddah, entry from external gates number 3 and 6 will be to the internal corridors 1 and 6, and the allocation of the 5th upper floor for families will with a total capacity of 14,000 seats. So just as we had mentioned about the women driving in Saudi Arabia, although we gave you here on Islam in the News the behind-the-scenes rules that still went with that, which didn't make it sound as nice as the mainstream media made it sound. But women aren't just going into sports stadiums. I have here Saudi women-only motor show opens in Jeddah as well. This is also from Al Arabia. Women flock to Le Mall in Jeddah on Thursday to check out the kingdom's first car exposition aimed at women, a few months after Saudi Arabia granted them the right to drive. Pink, orange, and yellow balloons hung in the mall's showroom as women posed for photos and selfies in front of the cars. One woman in the driver's seat fixed her face cover. Another wrapped her turquoise-painted fingernails around the steering wheel, feeling it out. In a decree issued in September, King Salman ordered by June an end to the ban on women drivers. It says here, quote, "I've always been interested in cars, but we didn't have the ability to drive," said Galda Al-Ali, a customer. "And now I'm very interested in buying a car, but I would like the payments and prices not to be very high." The exposition focused on fuel-efficient cars and provided a team of saleswomen to help their new customer base. The showroom carried signs emblazoned with the slogan, "Drive and Shop," a play on words in Arabic using the female form of the verbs. "It is known that women are the largest section who shop in malls," said Sharifa Muhammad, who heads the head exhibitions saleswoman. "The whole mall is run by women anyway. All the cashiers are women. Everyone in the restaurants are women." So, okay. But yeah, if you go back quite a few shows at this point, we did give the other behind-the-scenes rules that went along with that. Women are now allowed to drive, quote unquote. So might want to check those out. But over in Iran, here from Women in the World, I have 8 women arrested in Iran for posting photos to social media without hijabs. Authorities in Iran arrested 8 women accused of un-Islamic, quote-unquote, behavior for posting photos of themselves modeling without their headscarves on Instagram, the BBC reported. According to a government statement, an operation targeting women for posting photos of themselves to social media yielded information on 170 women identified as being involved in online modeling, including 59 photographers and makeup artists, 58 models, and 51 fashion salon managers and designers. The operation led to 29 women being contacted by police, most of whom, quote, reformed their behavior after receiving a notice. 8 of the women, however, did not comply with authorities and were arrested. Their individual information was not released. The country's Center for Surveying and Combating Organized Cybercrimes told the BBC it intended to sterilize, quote-unquote, cyberspace and was focusing on Instagram with fresh operations in coming days. Tehran's prosecutor, Javad Babi, announced the arrests on broadcast television on Sunday, saying that modeling agencies have been, quote, making and spreading immoral and un-Islamic culture and promiscuity online. He also warned viewers of the quote, threats to morality and the foundation of family, unquote, posed by social media. Women in Iran are required to cover their hair in public. Last year, Iranian actress Sadaf Tahranian fled the country after posing photos of herself not wearing a hijab to Facebook and Instagram. Authorities in the country called her an offender, quote unquote, and said she would be barred from acting. Women in the World attempted to contact Tahranian earlier this year, but was told she was seeking refuge in the United Arab Emirates and did not respond for requests for an interview. It's unclear whether Tahranian has returned to Iran, but location check-ins of recent posts on her Facebook page suggest she remains out of the country. That's pretty smart, you know, if you're like wanted by an Islamic government. Yeah, turn off your location check-in posts for Facebook. Yeah. Anyway, also from Iran, from the New York Times here, I have Iran bans English in primary schools to block cultural invasion. Iran has banned the teaching of English in primary schools, a senior education official said, after Islamic leaders warned that early learning of the language opened the way to a Western, quote, cultural invasion. Teaching English in government and non-governmental primary schools in the official curriculum is against laws and regulations. Yes, that was said by Mehdi Navid Adham, the head of the state-run High Education Council, told state television late on Saturday. This is because the assumption is that in primary education, the groundwork for the Iranian culture of the students is laid, Mr. Navid Adham said, adding that a non-curriculum English class might also be blocked. The teaching of English usually starts in middle school in Iran around the ages of 12 to 14, but some primary schools below that age also have English classes. Some children also attend private language institutes after their school day, and many children from more privileged families who attend non-government schools receive English tuition from daycare through high school. Iran's Islamic leaders have often warned about the dangers of a, quote, cultural invasion, and the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, voiced outrage in 2016 over the, quote, teaching of the English language spreading to nursery schools. Ayatollah Khamenei, who has the final say in all state matters, said that speech to teachers, quote, that does not mean opposition to learning a foreign language, but this is the promotion of a foreign culture in the country and among children, young adults, and youth. Western thinkers have time and again said that instead of colonialist expansionism, the best and the least costly way would have been inculcation of thought and culture to the younger generations of countries. Ayatollah Khamenei said, according to the text of the speech posted on leader.ir, a website run by his office. Now, of course, this is something that has been happening for years. There are many books available out there on this new generation and how large of a percentage of Iran's population in general is below the age of 30. We're seeing, of course, too, with everything that's been in the news the last couple of weeks when we were on vacation from doing shows about the uprisings in Iran and all of that, which has been spread around, even in the mainstream media. Although, of course, you can't really expect them to talk about, people who, although they grew up in a country underneath a particular law system, don't agree with it, are fed up with it, and they want to get rid of it. And this is the case with many people in Iran who are doing this uprising, is saying, hey, we don't want Sharia. Now, it's very interesting when things like this happen, because it's like, okay, well, the people outside that country, all they can do is watch and say, okay, what's going to happen here? Is someone new going to come to power? Is some laws going to be changed? Whatever else. Obviously, some of these laws that are being sugar-coated a bit or whatever in Saudi Arabia are very surprising to people. But it's not like they just gave, full-fledged rights to women in every way. And again, if you talk with the people who actually live there or get information from them, then you're able to get, again, more of the undisclosed publicly behind-the-scenes rules that are still in place with this perceived leniency that is kind of shown to the West. Again, there is some, but it's not like, again, all of a sudden men and women are on equal footing, which has never been the case under Islam, and it's still, of course, not the case now, of course, according to the primary and secondary sources themselves. Moving on to persecution news, I have here from World Watch Monitor, unprecedented persecution of Egypt's Christians heads 2018 World Watch list. More Christians abused in India than in all other countries combined. Nepal enters the list. Islamic extremists driven out of Iraq and Syria are behind a new intensity of Christian persecution in surrounding countries, says global charity Open Doors in its latest annual survey of countries where it is most difficult to live as a Christian. The Open Doors 2018 World Watch list shines a light on the suffering of Coptic Christians in Egypt, ranked 17 on this year's list. Last year, 128 Egyptian Christians were killed in religiously motivated attacks, Many others had to flee their homes for other parts of the country. Perhaps Egypt's most clear-cut case of anti-Christian violence was when an assassin asked a Coptic woman to help him cross off from his hit list the names of her husband and so on, whom he had just murdered. A spate of killings over the summer led a Cairo priest to describe the murder of Copts as the most aggressive campaign against them in the history of modern Egypt. In February, the Islamic State group vowed in a propaganda video to, quote, wipe out Egypt's Copts and liberate Cairo. Egypt, which is home to about half the Christians in the Middle East, witnessed several incidents of mass murder during celebrated dates in the Christian calendar. At Easter, 49 people were killed in 2 church bombings, while in May, Islamic extremists attacked people traveling to an Ascension Day service at a monastery in Upper Egypt, killing 28. And if you have been tuning in for a while, you did see pictures and details about both of those atrocities as well. Also from World Watch Monitor, Ethiopian Christians arrested for praying against government, quote unquote. 7 Ethiopian Christians have been arrested and detained in the northwestern town of Chogni on suspicion of praying against the government. A local source told World Watch Monitor the 7 members of the Maseret Christos Church were followed and overheard by a local militia group when they went up a mountain to pray. When the Christians prayed, quote, against Satan's power and kingdom, unquote, a common choice of words in certain evangelical churches in Ethiopia, the group accused them of referring to the government. The Christians have not been formally charged yet, but they were refused bail at a court hearing on the 2nd of January, and they do remain in custody. It is not clear when their next court appearance will be. Also, Ethiopia is 29th on the newly released 2018 Open Doors World Watch list of the 50 countries where it is most difficult to live as a Christian. The pressure on Christians there is adjudicated or judged to be very high because of religious and ethnic tensions combined with political and civil unrest. Also, the government is growing more authoritarian and has restricted religious institutions. So, very interesting here that they're accused of praying against the government when they use the words Satan's power and kingdom. And then here, the government is growing more authoritarian as restricted religious institutions. Okay. Also, from Christian Post, 3 Nepalese Christians jailed in India for spreading Christianity and insulting Hindu gods. 3 Nepalese Christians who shared Christian materials in the Shahjahanpur city in India have been arrested and sent to jail after some locals accused them of spreading Christianity and insulting Hindu gods. The Times of India identified the accused on Thursday as Indra Bahadur Tamad, Shukra Rai, and Mekh Bahudar, who arrived in Shahjahanpur on Sunday and began distributing Christian books. This is a workout every single week, saying a lot of the words that are in these articles here. The Nepalese citizens had rented a house and had planned to stay there for a while, but on Wednesday, when addressing a crowd, they got into an argument with a couple of local Hindu men, Ravi Prakash Dikshit, hopefully Dikshit, and Vimal Pandey. Dikshit and Pandey later filed a complaint against the Christians, accusing them of insulting Hindu gods, which led them to the arrests. Other locals who witnessed the exchange said the Christians are innocent, however, and of course that is commonly the case in a lot of these countries where there is persecution against Christians. Yes, they are usually minding their own business for the most part because it's illegal to go out there and proselytize and give out Bibles and open air preach in a lot of countries that are under Sharia to whatever degree. So yes, as we see, continued persecution. And also from World Watch Monitor, I have, could Pakistan's place on U.S. watch list create more problems for minorities? It says here the U.S. State Department last week placed Pakistan on a special watch list for severe violations of religious freedom. The U.S. did not, however, go as far as adding it to its 10 countries of particular concern. For countries where governments have engaged in or tolerated systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom, quote unquote. The U.S. Secretary of State said the protection of religious freedom is vital to peace, stability, and prosperity. The designations are aimed at improving the respect for religious freedom in these countries. The naming of Pakistan comes at a time when the two countries almost severed their long-standing relationship as allies in the war on terror, quote unquote, and Pakistani religious minorities have responded with diverse views. This next story is a completely heartbreaking story here. I have a couple here from Asia News. This headline is, for Pakistani activists, a rape culture places no value in children. The country mourns Zainab, 7 years old, from near Lahore. Her body, left in a rubbish dump, shows signs of torture. The culture of rape feeds on a cultural background defined by the division between men and women, misogyny, and abuses in madrasas. The rape and murder of Zainab, a 7-year-old girl whose body was found in a dump in Kasur near Lahore, has sent shockwaves across the country. For many activists, failing the country's children has brought shame. The outrage caused by the child's death is particularly directed at the police, who failed to mount an adequate search even when they knew that she was missing. In the meantime, the gruesome details of the murder have been made public in the last few hours. Broken neck, signs of torture, and seminal fluid and mud on the body. Asia News spoke to a number of activists about the cultural background that has fed a, quote, culture of rape, such as gender divisions, misogyny, abuses in madrasas, which victimize children who become perpetrators as adults. Child sexual abuse has become an epidemic in the country. People have become experts at fooling themselves that there are more important things to occupy their time. Without normal, happy childhoods and safe neighborhoods, children lose everything. The same pseudo-religious culture has restrained people from suitable participation in activities related to art, like music, dance, and singing. Engaging in art is the best way to channel feelings of deprivation, depression, and social justice, which our society has faced for decades. The outcome is explicit and takes on the form of Zainab's and Mashal Khan's tragedies. This is a quote by Nassim Kassar. He also said this issue has some deep cultural roots that present female gender as weak and subservient. The culture is responsible for restrictions on the social mingling of both genders in daily activities, which creates frustration that lead to brutality like rape and eventually murder. Obviously, there's no, I think I'm skipped a paragraph here. Pakistan is a conservative and male-dominated society based on patriarchal values. Both boys and men, find very rare opportunities to interact with girls and women, said Mohammed Zubair, activist and program manager at the South Asia Partnership, Pakistan. Sex out of wedlock is a sin and a crime. Since sex is a basic instinct in human nature, boys and men are driven to commit such acts out of frustration. Obviously, there's no justification for the Kasur incident, but is a cause for such violent and inhumane acts. There may be other safe option for sexual satisfaction. I'm trying to read the kind of weird wording here. But this thing only comes through sex education, which is considered taboo in Pakistan. Boys and girls, particularly children, need to learn about safeguards and preventative measures to defend themselves against sexual advances. I'm looking at a follow-up story to this that came out the next day. It's also from Asian News, called Pakistan Mourns Child Raped, Killed, and Thrown into a Rubbish Dump. The mother said, "Today I am not Hira Naz. Today I'm a mother. That's why I am sitting with my daughter." Miss Naz told millions of viewers before she read the news. It is true when they say that the smallest coffins are the heaviest. An entire Pakistan is burdened by the weight of Zainab's coffin. So that's a family you can pray for. That is a country you can pray for. And stories like this, which, continue to come out over the months, over the years, is just one more reason why the gospel needs to get out to the world. If people don't know who Jesus Christ truly is, how can we ever expect, in a fallen world where we are, for things like this not to happen? Ever since Eve disobeyed God, even though Adam was created first, and I've talked about this before, he was told to eat of every tree, but not of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then, she was made, she's the one who ate first, but then we read in the Bible, but it's through one man that sin entered the world. Adam, and being the man, the sin was passed on through him. And this is something that Muslims don't understand, and many other people don't as well. We are born with a sin nature. We aren't born with a clean slate in the sense that we are good people. We are not good people. We are wretched. God is perfect. God is holy, and we are not. We have sinned against a holy God. You tell one lie, it's not what you've done, but it's who you've done it against. When you sin against the God of the universe, that requires an infinite eternal punishment. And no man-made religion out there that teaches you that if you do more good than bad can ever help you in any way, because a good God cannot let you go because you've done good things. If you've done one bad thing, you must be punished. We've all sinned against God. We all need to repent and put our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. And the Jesus of Nazareth, the Jew who we find in the New Testament, not the Isa of the Quran, not the Jesus of Mormonism, who was another God other than God the Father, not the Jesus of Jehovah's Witnesses, who is Michael the Archangel incarnate, quote unquote. This is why the truth needs to continually be spread out to the world. We need to pray for people throughout the world. That's why we continue to encourage Christians, reach out to your Muslim neighbors. You can always count the amount of seeds in an apple, but you can never count the amount of apples that will come from one seed. And when you go and share the gospel with someone, you don't know how the Lord is going to use that for his glory, and how many people may become Christians down the road because of that. And they only become Christians, true Christians, when they realize the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ, that they've sinned against a holy God, and that Jesus is the only way they can be reconciled to God the Father. And they repent and put their trust in the true Jesus, not a false Jesus. And there's many false Jesuses out there, even though Jesuses isn't really a word, but you know what I mean there. Moving on to Clarion Project, I have here, end of separate Sharia law for Muslims. The Greek parliament adopted a new law that enables members of the country's Muslim community to have family and inheritance law judged before the Greek secular courts, rather than by Islamic Sharia courts, reported The Guardian. According to arrangements Greece made with Turkey in the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920 and Lausanne, 1923, I think it's pronounced Lausanne, Lausanne. Muslims who become citizens of Greece after World War I were obligated to adjudicate matters of child custody, divorce, and inheritance according to Islamic law. The treaties concerned 2 million people transferred between Greece and Turkey. Both countries put into place laws that covered their minority populations that remained in the countries. The Greek Muslim community in question is roughly 110,000 to 120,000 strong, and mainly resides in Thrace, in the east of the country on the border with Turkey. Islamic religious courts will still exist, but will only be able to apply their rulings with the consent of all parties. Greece is the only country in the European Union with Islamic religious courts. Have here from Zero Hedge. Spare us the thought police, quote unquote. Germans rage as new hate speech law backfires. Listen to this. As we reported recently in what was officially a noble attempt to eliminate online hate speech in social media, and unofficially a devious crackdown on free speech, on January 1st, 2018, Germany passed a law that forces websites to censor content deemed illegal under the new law and have it deleted within 24 hours. Ironically, as we observed last week, just hours after the law's passage, it immediately backfired when it claimed its first victim, a German satire magazine's Twitter account, which parodied anti-Muslim comment. Incidentally, this perfectly predictable, if, quote, totally unexpected, unquote, outcome is exactly what we and many others had warned would happen. And now it is finally dawning on Germany that anytime the government gets involved in defining what is allowed and what isn't, especially when it comes to that most fundamental of liberties, free speech, the result is always a disaster. According to Germany's top-selling and most popular newspaper, Bild, the new German law meant to curtail online hate speech is, quote, stifling free speech and making martyrs out of anti-immigrant politicians whose posts are deleted. The law, which took effect on January 1st, can impose fines of up to 50 million euros, that's 60 million US dollars, on sites that fail to remove hate speech promptly and threatens the profitability of social media giants as Twitter and Facebook. Please spare us the thought police, read the headline in Wednesday's Bild above an article that called the law a sin, quote unquote, against freedom of opinion enshrined in Germany's constitution. Now, this here is one more example of what is a slippery slope, and it's going to be a slippery slope for every country in the West who is falling for the smooth talk of political Islamists and are trying to say, well, just don't offend Muslims, don't critique Islam, don't critique Muhammad, don't critique the Quran. Like I've said many times, those are the exact laws that you're going to face if you're living under Sharia. So if you actually obey those laws, whether they are implemented or not, maybe you're just such a politically correct person, you don't like to offend people, even with the truth. All you're doing is implementing aspects of Sharia upon yourself. Now, if you're ever living under Sharia, well, then those laws are going to be pretty much official, whether you like them or not. So people need to know that freedom of speech includes speech that offends. Nobody complains when you say something that they like or agree with, which lets us know right there alone the first amendment of free speech is offensive speech, or the speech that people don't like, is the exact kind of speech that it was meant to protect in the first place. It gives you the right to be offended and the right to offend other people. If you don't like what someone says, then walk away, and that's that. Moving on to Al Monitor, Erdogan, no extradition to U.S. until Turkey gets Gulen. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has stated that Turkey will not extradite any more suspects to the United States until Washington hands over the Muslim preacher who was accused of masterminding the failed 2016 military coup. Now, we have a number of pictures to show you here. Now, right here, as you can see, you have Erdogan, of course. He's a lot more recognizable to people. The other man there is Gulen, Fethullah Gulen, and he is part of the Gulenist movement. Now, we're going to show you some different pictures because these guys actually used to be colleagues, I guess you can say. They used to be pretty much on the same side years ago. It wasn't until 2013 that there was a fallout. And this right here, this picture that you see is actually from 2013. But there was a fallout between these men. And it's very interesting because Gulen, again, the older guy there, he left Turkey and came to the United States in 1998. So he's been here for quite a while. And um, it wasn't until 2013 that there was this rift between them. Of course, Erdogan has more power now than he did back in 1998, and even in the early 2000s and all of that. So people wonder, because the Gulen, you see him here and there in the U.S. and pictures and stuff. His organization base is in Pennsylvania, as far as I recall, and he is known as a man who started a charter school movement in the United States. And there's a picture here, which we'll get to eventually. I'm keeping an eye on what pictures we're showing here. But anyway, so both of these guys, the best way to explain this is basically Gulen, in his view, is pretty much like the Muslim Brotherhood. But even a little bit more watered down, because Gulen, he thinks that Muslims should modernize, and is more okay with westernizing in a sense, a little bit more than the Muslim Brotherhood is, but still, of course, has the goal of wanting the world to be under Sharia and wanting every person to become a Muslim and all of that. And of course, this isn't talked about too much, right? And if you watch the mainstream media and stuff, of course, Erdogan, who I've talked about before, who I said, hey, he's the guy who a lot of different Muslim countries have pointed to, saying, hey, he's the poster boy for what we hope is a new eventual Islamic State, not referring to ISIS, but an actual, Ottoman Empire type Islamic State. But again, Gulen, again, Gulen, the older guy, he has a lot of followers in Turkey. And when you read these different news stories, and I've said these different news stories about how Erdogan has had a lot of different people, including people in the military, police, etc., arrested because they are Gulen sympathizers. The main thing that they blame it on is saying that, oh, Gulen and his people, they were behind the 2016 coup, or attempted coup. But if we read the history here, again, this is pretty much a struggle for power here, because it's not like Gulen left and, okay, everybody who supports him went with him. He has a lot of followers in Turkey, and that is why it's such a big deal for Erdogan. And again, it's interesting because much like Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood, who both want the world under Sharia, they don't like each other, right? I mean, they both want to be the top dog, and this is the same way with Erdogan and Gulen. Yes, they both want the world to be under Sharia, and they both want everyone to become a Muslim, or at least be controlled by Sharia, living under Sharia. But they both want to be the top guy, of course. And of course, they have some different ideas and stuff about ideology and everything. Now, Gulen, or Hizmet means, what does it mean? I had the word here. There's another book I want to show. Service, yeah, service movement, Hizmet. This movement in Turkey is the country's most powerful and affluent religious organization. So as we have seen, Egypt secularize, but then the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood want the country to be under Sharia. We have seen a secularization, of course, of Turkey, and we have the history of Ataturk and all of that. But then we have both Gulen and Erdogan, who both want, again, Turkey under Sharia, and of course, ultimately the whole world under Sharia. Again, Gulen left in 1998, and the rift between he and Erdogan didn't happen until 2013. Now, I want to show picture number 13.8, because this is a picture of a book that you can get on Amazon. It's called The Gulen Movement, Turkey's Islamic Supremacist Cult and Its Contributions to the Civilization Jihad. This is a book by Claire Lopez and also Christopher Holton. This book is $6, okay? You can get the Kindle for $2.99. It's less than 100 pages. This thing is packed with information. I mean, if you're a person who likes to take notes here and there, I mean, you might as well not, because unless you're just going to rewrite the book, I mean, you might as well just, highlight pretty much every sentence here, because it's full of information for a 100-page book. But I do want to give you some information here. Fethullah Gulen is a Turkish Islamic scholar of the thoroughly jihadist Sufi Ottoman tradition with a controversial history and many followers and admirers in both the Islamic and Western worlds. He is known as the spiritual leader of an Islamic socio-political movement and now spans the globe with a network of some 1,500 schools, including universities, in more than 1,500 countries, including the United States. Now, that right there is from this book. Again, it's only $6 if you want to go on Amazon and get it. I'm going to give you some other tidbits here, though. Again, this Gulen movement is pretty much like a stealth jihad movement. It's kind of weird, though, because when I'm reading it, reading like the things that the Gulenists do, it's called the supremacist cult because it was almost kind of reminding me of like brainwashing and that type of stuff, where they're only given like 3 hours of sleep each night, and you have 2 hours to do whatever you want during the day, and the whole rest of the time has to be devoted to hizmet, which again is the service. Now, what's interesting too. Again, this is pretty much equivalent to Egypt declaring this is what I want to tell you here. Here's my other notes. So basically, as I have mentioned here before too, and as that news story said, Erdogan says, hey, unless you give me Gulen, I'm not going to give you anybody. And of course, there's an American pastor who is still in Turkey who's being held, and Erdogan saying, hey, unless I get Gulen, I'm not extraditing anybody else. He wants Gulen, the APK, I believe it is, Erdogan's government there. It has declared Gulen and his organization a terrorist organization, much like you have, again, secular Egypt and declaring the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. You have the same thing with Turkey declaring the Gulenists a terrorist organization. Now, he wants Gulen sent back to Turkey. But the extradition treaty or whatever it is that both the United States and Turkey have agreed on, it basically has to be a law that is illegal in both countries. Now, unless Erdogan can give the U.S. like evidence saying, okay, this is actually a crime recognized by the United States, well, then it's very unlikely the United States is going to actually send Erdogan back. If he has basically saying, oh, well, he wants power and all this other stuff, the U.S. is probably still asking, well, what crime has he committed where we should send him back to Turkey? So very interesting stuff. And what's interesting, too, is that Gulen, they actually have Gulen movement in the U.S., like I said, affiliated with universities. I have on the list here Virginia International University in Fairfax, American Islamic College in Chicago, and North American University in Houston, Texas. Also, close ties with the University of Houston, where the Gulen Institute is labeled a nonprofit research organization dedicated to the promotion of peace and civic welfare, and is a joint initiative of the Graduate College of Social Work and the Institute of Interfaith Dialogue, now known as Dialogue Institute of the Southwest. Now, Gulen also has K-12 charter schools. Actually, in Appendix where is it here? A. There's pages and pages here of the exact names of the schools that are actual charter schools. Has again these are publicly funded schools here as well. California, Magnolia Science Academy in Reseda Valley, Carson, Venice, Hollywood, Palms, Van Nuys, San Diego, Santa Clara. Magnolia Science Academy, 1 through 8. That's just California. We have 10 in Florida, 1 in Colorado, 1 in District of Columbia, 2 in Georgia, 4 in Illinois, 3 in Indiana, 1 in Louisiana, 4 in Maryland, 3 in Massachusetts, 1 in Michigan, 1 in Minnesota, 5 in Missouri, 2 in Nevada, 6 in New Jersey, 1 in New Mexico, 4 in New York, 2 in North Carolina, 19 in Ohio. The list goes on. So K-12 schools, they're affiliated with universities. They have a media empire that they own. They have business affiliates, think tanks, and cultural organizations, Turkic American Alliance movement, Turkic American Alliance subgroups, and other Gulen movement charities and NGOs. The lists of all of these are in this short, again, less than 100-page book. And again, you will see here that this Gulen movement, it's a Turkish equivalent of the Muslim Brotherhood, but they aren't as gung-ho on dawah as much as the Muslim Brotherhood is. And also, too, I haven't read anything in here yet about violence by Gulenists, where, of course, you hear about violence by the Muslim Brotherhood all the time. So interesting, because, again, a lot of people in America know nothing whatsoever about this movement. If they have heard about it, they've heard the name and stuff, but that's it. Now, the last or the next picture I have here, this is from lausanne.org. Again, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, lausanne.org. There's an article here by Dr. Peter Riddell. It's called "What Can Christians Learn from a Global Islamic Movement? Meet the Gulen Movement, Practicing Presence More Than Proselytization." This is by Dr. Peter Riddell. We should have a picture here, picture 14. And Dr. Peter Riddell is a Christian, an expert in Islam, an expert. He's actually, Dr. Peter Riddell was actually the research professor, or was the man overseeing Dr. J. Smith when he got his PhD, and also Dr. Daniel Janosic when he got his PhD. So Dr. Peter Riddell, a highly regarded scholar, Christian, but also an expert on Islam, he wrote this article here, very good. And it was written in January of 2018. So if I just came out within the last day or so. But again, Dr. Peter Riddell, that's Riddell. What can Christians learn from a global Islamic movement? Now, if you read this article, again, lausanne.org, and then combine that with this book by Holton and Lopez, again, Gulen and the Gulenist movement, Turkey's Islamic supremacist cult and its contributions to the civilization jihad. Interesting dynamic here. As you see here in the next picture here, I have from Barnabas Fund, Egypt, president attends Christmas service and tells Christians, "You are our family." So as we have the president of Egypt liking Christians and saying, "Hey, you are our family," and declaring the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, they've declared the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization, and a lot of people, of course, in the United States are still trying to get Trump to do that same thing. The next few pictures here are from Clarion Project, because they actually set up a petition: "Tell Trump, say no to the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States." They actually have a page you can click on. It says "Sign our petition." And you can sign that petition to let Trump know, hey, in the United States, declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. The UAE has done it. Saudi Arabia has done it. Egypt has done it. Again, very interesting distinction between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Gulen movement, because both want Sharia. Both want everyone to become Muslim. Again, the Gulen isn't as pushy as the Muslim Brotherhood. Again, so far, I haven't read of any violent acts by the Gulen movement. If you know of any, please send them my way. I'm still studying it more. But this is the story behind Erdogan and his hatred for Gulen, and the different stories that we've talked about recently, where Gulen supporters and stuff are being arrested, put in jail, put in prison, tortured, whatever, all that kind of stuff. So interesting dynamic in the distinctions between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Gulen movement. Now, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood isn't out there carrying guns like ISIS and jihadists, but of course, anyone who has done their homework, they know that the Muslim Brotherhood is still a threat to the West. And as you will read in the article by Dr. Riddell and this book, the Gulen movement is a threat to the West as well. There are, again, distinctions there, but this is one more reason why we need to study Islam on our own. Again, it's not your Muslim neighbor, coworker, friend, etc., who defines it. Muhammad defined it 1400 years ago. You need to know what Islam is according to Muhammad. You need to know about the political Islamists who are today wearing suits and smooth talking people in the West into believing that there's no threat whatsoever of the religio-political system of Islam. But like I said, we need to continually get the gospel out there. We need to do our homework, know this information, inform other people. That's a huge part of this, informing other Christians, informing non-Christians. And at the same time, as I always implore you to do, reach out to your Muslim neighbors, share the gospel with them, befriend them, show them the love of Christ. But they don't need just the love of Christ and loving actions. They need the gospel, which requires words, either verbally spoken or written. Give them a gospel tract in Arabic, a Gospel of John in Arabic, a Bible in Arabic, or whatever language they happen to speak. If they are Muslim, they need the gospel. And that's what we want to continually remind you about. And of course, if you're a loyal viewer, you already know that. So thank you so much for being with us every single week on Islam and the News. We will see you next Friday, but God bless you and good night.